So, the other thing that what I want to go into right now is how the actually I want to backtrack just a little bit from the time I think I left off at the point where I had talked about how I was trying to get FOIA from the FBI after I was falsely arrested and put in jail, and how I was trying to nurture my unborn baby at the time in this apartment. And I want to backtrack a little bit because I forgot to mention a couple of things regarding what was going on at the same time that I was being tortured with migraines and assaulted and refused treatment at the hospitals and called drug seeking. After I was in the situation of being repeatedly raped by federally connected employees in Oregon, I was then in Washington State, trapped there, and then they did the exact same thing to me there. It happened one time in Washington State in the sense of being set up in the same way to have something to be raped while incapacitated and while police were all around. So it was on my birthday, and by then I was stuck in Washington. My cousin Rainey Guzman asked me to go out with her if I wanted to go out for my birthday to this bar called Clearwater. And I said sure, and I really did love to dance, and so she was there and a couple other people, and it was actually either I think it was on my birthday or just the time after, but she said go ahead, and this friend of hers, or someone that they knew, was going to pick me up, or she called me and said, let's go out, and then we were going to meet Rainey there. So I met this woman at her house, and we put on makeup there at her place and got ready together. And she lived in an area that was close to Central Washington Hospitals, that section of Wenatchee. And then I think she told me then or later that she had worked as a stripper in Seattle, for a while, and then she was back in Wenatchee after doing that for over a year. And I don't know if it was full nudity or just top, but she was very pretty. She was a good dancer. And anyway, so I didn't hold that against her in any way, and I felt that since maybe my relatives or a relative knew who she was, she would be okay to go out with. So we got there to the dance place, and then my cousin was there, and then she said that they had to leave, and by then I was very intoxicated. She was actually there with me, and then she said that she had to leave and I could stay with, instead of getting a ride with Rainey, I get a ride home, since I still wanted to dance with this other woman. And she got me another drink, and I trusted her because of her connection to my cousin. That was why I believed I was going to have a safe way back home, and that it was safe for me to be drunk on my birthday if I wanted to be. So I was, and I danced, and she was dancing, and then I was very, very drunk. I drank a lot on my birthday that time. And after I was drunk, she left. She just disappeared. All of a sudden I looked around. I asked people where she had gone. Nobody knew where she was. Her boyfriend was the DJ there for that particular dance thing at Clearwater. And I don't know if Michael Holt's brother was part of the ownership at that bar at that time, but if so, they had security cameras. Maybe he became part of the owner later. But somebody knew. I mean, So all of a sudden I was outside of the bar and I was totally drunk and I didn't know anybody in that town. I was very new to the area. I didn't have any friends there. I mean, I knew my cousins and then this friend that they knew, and that was it. So I had to get to a phone, and I walked from this bar to a 7-Eleven to make a phone call or to ask to use the telephone. And when I was there, I was trying to make the phone call, and then somebody pulled up alongside and said, do you need a ride back to your, do you need a ride somewhere? And that was the first time, aside from my trying to get a ride back to Portland when the police ditched me in the middle of the night and I had to get back from my classes, that was me asking if, a licensed truck driver could get me back to Portland. But this was a situation where I was totally drunk. And it was the first time this situation had come up where somebody then approaches me and asks if I need to ride home, and I did. So I asked if I could get a ride to my house, or to my grandparents' house. And they said yes, they would do that. So, and first the police were there. First, the Douglas County Police. It was East Wenatchee Police for an area. And I actually wanted to drive myself. I remember I was thinking I couldn't believe it, I'd been ditched after I was drunk. So I wanted to see if I wanted to drive my own car back to my grandparents' house. And there were police right there. Maybe it's a stupid thing, but I asked them if I could do a breathalyzer really quick to see if I was too intoxicated to drive, because I did want to drive safely. And why I would do that, I mean, I was just drunk. And I was drunk, but I was still trying to be a safe person and obey the laws. So here I am asking these officers if I was too drunk to drive, and they did the test, and I was. So they basically, here's the East Wenatchee Douglas County Police with proof and evidence that I was incapacitated. So the next thing that happened is probably about 10 minutes later or 5 minutes later, after the police left, this guy shows up and he asks me if I want to ride. And he's got a couple other people with him. And they took me, instead of taking me to my house, one guy got out, a black man got out. He seemed nervous. I think that whoever he was, he knew something really wrong was going on. He had an idea that he's going to get out of there really quick. I don't blame him. I mean, I don't know that he was a good person. I don't know what the whole situation was, but I had a feeling that, even though I was drunk, I had a feeling that he was weirded out by something. And after he got out and left, then it was me and this Italian guy. I didn't know where he worked or anything, and I had said that I needed a ride to my grandparents' house, and they said, no, that's too far, just stay at my house and then you can go in the morning. And I said I didn't want to, but he said to do that. So then I didn't really have an option. And I may have even tried to get a hold of my cousin. She didn't answer the phone or wasn't able to get to the phone. I know that I made an attempt to get to my grandparents' house. And I know that the East Wenatchee Police knew that I was incapacitated. So all of a sudden this guy shows up after they left. And he's taking me to his house because he said he'll take me home in the morning. And I said I didn't want to do anything, but then we were at his house, and I think I was just out of it. I was too. If I consented, which I think in some way I probably did, or I was just sort of mute on that point. I know that I was not able to consent under the law. I was not able to consent. And so he raped me. And then I found out that he had a girlfriend who was a nurse for an oncology department, a nurse at a cancer place. He didn't tell me what he did, but I later found out I think that he was a doctor. He was an Italian, American Italian in Wenatchee. He was a doctor. One of the hospitals there. And I believe his name was Frank. The only other person that slightly resembled him was someone by the last name of Lee, or his first name was Lee, and he was at this work source place where you could learn how to get work and get back on your feet after being unemployed for a while. And he was also an American Italian, and he seemed very similar to this in mannerism to this other guy. But I believe it was the other guy, because when I saw him at the hospital one day, I recognized him. And this guy Lee, who was also American Italian, I found out he was part of some group of American Italians of the area. So they probably knew each other, and he was very hostile towards me and had me banned from that organization when I was trying to get work. He had the police come and defamed me to other people who worked there. So they basically tried to make me look like I was bad, and probably because they just wanted to make me look like a bad person because they'd done horrible things to me, cover up for others. So I was raped on my birthday, and right before I was raped, the police showed up at that house and asked him if he was okay. And he went outside and talked to them and said everything's fine and whatever, waved him on. So police knew I was incapacitated. I had gone to them to have them give me a breathalyzer to see if I could drive home. And then their friend shows up, offers me a ride when I'm too drunk to decline doing something like that. And I think to myself, yes, they'll take me to my grandparents' house. And then the police show up at his house again and make sure that he's okay. So let me think here. Maybe the East Wenatchee, Chelan, Douglas County Police have just nothing to hide, right? Just like the people in Portland, Oregon. Because what they did to me there was almost exactly in pattern like what they were doing to me in Oregon, with police looking out for federal employees that were raping me, setting me up to be incapacitated, having someone ditch me at the last minute when I didn't expect it and had no reason to expect it, and then raping me. So first they did that in Oregon, then they found an occasion to do it again in Washington State. And it involved the police. The police knew. And I believe that the police set it up. So that was one of the first things that happened. And I am going to take a break right now and then move on to talking about, having my son, the prenatal stage, and then what happened in the hospital and everything. Or maybe I can do that a little bit later tonight, but I just need a break right now from talking about it, because it's like talking like this to a camera is not very much different than talking to a counselor, although I don't need to be speaking with a counselor because I've already relived and rehashed all of this before. The only reason I'm bringing it up to the public is because I don't think that a lot of people really know what has happened, and I don't think they understand what some of the motives have been for police and law enforcement to defame me and go along with it. So, after being raped several times in Washington State, in Oregon State, with premeditated setups, I was then raped. That was the first time I was raped, then in Washington State. And it wasn't the first time I was raped in Washington State, because then a little bit later I was raped a second time. But that didn't happen until after my son was born. So I will talk about that later.